Oddly, I truly believe that bettering the world in which we live starts with each of us as an individual.
Mhm.
It's really about a mindset of personal accountability and gratitude. So if we live with that mindset of personal accountability, what can we do? We take account for our own actions. We realize that we are the masters of our destiny, and then combine that with an attitude of gratitude. So really looking for all the things around us that we're that there are to be grateful for, because gratitude is the genesis of happiness.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Well, greetings and salutations, folks. This is Audley Stevenson, and thank you for joining us here for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. You've got it locked to the Audacious Living Podcast, and as always, it's an absolute pleasure to bring you another episode of Audacious. At the same time, we're continuing our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. You know, this is episode 207, so welcome and thank you again for being here on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. We're going to talk all about the importance of choosing a positive attitude. And really, I make a point of emphasizing choosing because it truly is a choice for us to all make. It's choice is all ours. I've got fellow podcaster Wilk Wilkinson on today's episode, and he's the guest. And he's been doing a lot of work in spreading the word and continuing his own personal mission of bettering the world one attitude at a time. It certainly is a great chat that I'm certain that you'll all enjoy. So without any further delay, here's Wilk Wilkinson. Enjoy. Hey, Wilk, thank you for joining me today here on the Audacious Living Podcast. Thank you for making the time. I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. I've been looking forward to it, Audley. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, my pleasure. And again, I do enjoy these conversations because of the fact that we're able to connect with people and have important conversations about things that can help make people better. So I'm looking forward to this as well. Now, on the topic of bettering people, you've got a mission of sort of bettering the world, if you will, with respect to how people feel about themselves and each other and how they interact and all the things that we can do better for each other. So maybe as a starting point, Wilk, we can get you to sort of describe the work you do and how you got here.
Yeah. So the Derate The Hate podcast, my mission statement is all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. Because oddly, I truly believe that bettering the world in which we live starts with each of us as an individual. It's really about a mindset of personal accountability and gratitude. So if we live with that mindset of personal accountability, what can we do? We take account for our own actions. We realize that we are the masters of our destiny, and then combine that with an attitude of gratitude. So really looking for all the things around us that we're that there are to be grateful for, because gratitude is the genesis of happiness.
Right.
So when we combine an attitude of gratitude, oddly, with that mindset of personal accountability, knowing that we are the masters of our own destiny, knowing that no matter what happens around us, how we react to it is going to make the difference. You combine those two things and you can really change the whole trajectory of your life. And that's what I try to drive home to people. Now I take that same mentality And I use that for helping this, this depolarization movement that it really needs to be a movement, right? It may be
Right.
small now, but for years, especially here in the United States, things have become more toxic, more polarized. Social media that should have been a force to bring us together has in a
Yes.
way driven us apart. Our
Yes.
politics in the United States have gotten so ugly that people have gone to their respective corners, right? They've become more polarized, they've become more tribalistic, and I have a personal mission, and I do a lot of work in that depolarization space as a volunteer. But I really want people to understand we don't have to be divided. There are forces out there, oddly, that want to keep us divided. They have a vested interest in keeping us divided.
Right.
But if we aren't having the conversation with the people whom we disagree, it's going to get worse. So we got to have those conversations. And those conversations, in order to remain civil, really, it comes down to personal accountability. So it's kind of a full circle thing.
It totally does, and I like the way you sort of illustrated that because they're all connected. Well, they all are absolutely connected, and the starting point is just really our attitude. That's really what it comes down to. And so I like the whole idea of bettering the world one attitude at a time because it's so infectious and contagious, right? Like you think of an image of an elevator, right? You get into an elevator, and if someone comes in and they're smiling and they're happy and they say good morning or whatever, the impact that has on the other person, right? And so
Yep. Yep.
I do love the mission very, very much so.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've actually done an episode on. With smiles and bad moods are contagious. If we want to be around happy people, we have to try to project that happiness. We're the average of, in so many ways. I'm sure you've heard that old cliche, we're the average of the five people we spend the most time with. Well, it's
Mhm.
also, it also applies to our attitude and our mindset. If
Right.
we're around miserable people all the time, oddly, there's a very, very good chance that we too are going to be miserable. But if we try to spend time with happy people or surround ourselves with happy people, that happiness, that smile on your face, that attitude that you have becomes infectious. And it really can make the difference. And you want to grow a good tribe, grow a tribe of good, happy people, right? Get around a
Mhm.
bunch of people that are smiling, and
Yeah.
it's going to grow.
No, I absolutely agree with you. It absolutely will grow. I think in all this is really understand the life that we live every day. We have the privilege to live every day. It's really all about choices, and the things that we do are all choice. Every decision that we make is as a result of choice. That also applies to our happiness. We can choose to be happy or we could be angry or sad or some other negative emotion. Again, the
Absolutely right.
choice is yours. And I think when the more people will come to understand that, and not that they don't know it, there's a difference between knowing it and truly understanding it. I'm talking about the understanding part. So I think when people truly understand that, we can start to see a real difference made.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, I've had conversations with people, oddly, and I'm sure you have too, where people say, "Oh yeah, that whole mindset thing," and I can just choose to be happy. That all sounds good in a book, or it all sounds good when some coach is up there talking about it, but they don't know my story. They don't know what's going on with me. How can they tell me I can be happy when I'm going through this or that? And the reality is, oddly, is you're right. Life is made up of choices, and every choice that we make has some kind of consequence. People don't realize. You talk about understanding. People don't understand that a lot of what happens to us in life is the result of what we've done to get there. And those choices, it really comes down to making good choices a lot of times. Now, there's no doubt that good things happen to bad or bad things happen to good people. There's no way to question that, and it's an absolute fact. But it really comes back to what I said before. How do we react to it? There are
Yeah.
so many things in this world, oddly, that are outside of our control,
Mhm.
and how we react to them is going to make the difference. So if I allow something trivial in the morning to have the power over me to ruin my day, I'm going to have a bad day.
Mhm.
If I allow somebody in traffic that cut me off, and I start screaming and yelling and banging on my dashboard and flipping them the bird or whatever the case may
Right,
be,
right.
right? And then I let it eat at me the rest of the day, that's on me, not on them. Maybe that catalyst, maybe that first action, that one little thing, started with them.
Sure.
But do you think they let it ruin the rest of their day? No. Why would I give somebody who doesn't know me, who should have no impact on my life? Why should I give them the power to destroy my whole day? Why should I let 1-2 second interaction in my life, if even? I mean, most of the time it's a fraction of a second. Why would I allow that? Me personally, because that's
Yep.
where personal accountability comes in, right?
Yep.
Why would I allow that to ruin my day? Because it's me. They didn't ruin my day. I allowed that. I allowed something over which I had no power, no control. I allowed that to have power over me. I personally, oddly, I do not like that. One of the biggest things I do everything in my life, I do first through the lens of liberty, right? I love the idea of freedom. I love the idea of liberty. I do not like letting things have control over me.
Right.
Why would I allow somebody who knows nothing about me, who doesn't know me, who really, why would I allow them to take the power over me to ruin a part of my life? I'm only on this rock for a certain amount of time. It's very
Right.
small in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
Why would I give somebody else the power to ruin my day?
I was going to say even when you use the analogy of the driving in the morning, right? Like, so and actually when you think about it, it actually sounds kind of silly, but if at 9 a.m. in the morning somebody cut you off, right? The idea of going home at 5 p.m. that night and still be angry about that, right?
Right.
It just seems so silly, because the first thing you're like, yeah, but that was this morning. And this is where, if you had a gratuitous spirit, right, you'd recognize that there's so much wonderful things happen over the course of that day that should overshadow that mishap. So what we're not doing is we're not pretending the mishap didn't occur, right? We're not blocking, pretending. We're absolutely saying, yeah, it happened. However, that wasn't big enough to mess up our day, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think it is human nature for us, oddly, to sometimes forget. Like, okay, so I know you've managed people, and you've done incredible things with that respect in your life. We often spend more time criticizing small things, or some managers do, and I hope I hope people that report to me feel differently about me now, but I was that way one time, where
Right.
I would get hung up on maybe the one thing that they did wrong, as opposed to the 999 things today that they did right. Right. I've worked through that as a human being, not only in my work life, but my personal life,
Yeah.
and just my overall who I try to be as a human being now, right? But that takes work on our own part,
Yes.
right?
It's not easy.
Because people do so many good things throughout the day,
Yes.
but they tend to get hung up, whether it's them critiquing themselves and doing that self-evaluation, or critiquing those around them, or whatever. So often we get hung up on those little things that went wrong, as opposed to all the things that went right.
Right.
And it's that way. We got to look at life that way too. If it's in a conversation with somebody whom we disagree, right?
Right.
So often we get hung up having or get stuck on the couple things that we disagree on, as opposed to all the things that we probably agree on. If it's something that we do today, or we look back on a bad relationship, or look back on a conversation that we had, with maybe a parent or a loved one or whatever.
Yep.
We get hung up on that one thing we said wrong instead of all the things that we said right.
Yep.
It's we really need that paradigm shift,
Yes.
or so many of us do. I know I did as a human
Yes.
being. You know, I used to make more mistakes than I got right. So it was easy for me to find stuff that I did wrong because I did it pretty continuous. I was really good at doing things wrong.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to look very far to find things to be mad at myself for, right? But it's amazing how when you start to focus on the things that you did right, focus on the things that you said right, focus on those people in your life that are doing good, as opposed to hanging on to the toxicity that
Mhm.
tries to latch on to us. you
Yes.
know so once you start to focus on the positive and really focus, this is where the gratitude thing comes in. Focus on the things that we have to be grateful for,
Yes.
as opposed to those little things that agitate us.
Mhm.
That small grain of sand in, or that little rock in our shoe, as opposed to the fact that we have on a beautiful suit. That kind of thing. you know focus on that there's so much good. Don't focus
Mhm.
on that rock in your shoe. Focus on that really awesome suit that you got on.
Well, and it's been said that what we focus on expands too, right? So if you're focusing on this negative thing, well, it's going to start off as a little rock, and it should will get bigger and bigger and bigger. The same
Yeah.
could be said. The same could be said if we focus on the positive. We focus on
Yeah.
the wonderful things life has given us. We focus on the opportunities. It just makes sense, right? What we focus on, and so that's why I'm a big fan of even how we talk to ourselves and the things that we say. I do try to be mindful of that, because how what I say to myself, how I think of myself, how I feel about myself matters too.
It absolutely does. I mean, negative self-talk is one of the worst things that a person can do. I mean, I've on my podcast, I've had several personal, like mindset coaches and personal coaches too. Not necessarily my solid niche, but they're very, very, very important conversations, because those those mindset coaches, those people that spend all their time showing people how
Yes.
to think, what to think about themselves, and the direction that they need to go. Such an important thing,
Yes.
because negative self-talk, we as human beings, it's in our nature to naturally, that self-doubt thing, right? That imposter syndrome we have.
Yeah.
Am I really as good as I think I am? What business do I have doing this? Who am I to think that I can do this thing? Well, that's something that we need to get beyond,
Yep.
because that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, that ugliness inside us will grow. It will
Yes.
grow, and it will overcome us if we allow it to.
Yeah.
You know?
Again, if
So
if we allow it to, there you go. I love that.
if we allow it to, again, it's a personal choice, right?
Yes.
It's a personal choice. What we allow to have happen in our lives, we will get more of.
Right.
What we tolerate, we will get more of. If I allow myself to constantly beat myself up, I
Yep.
am going to find more reasons, oddly, to beat myself up. I will find them, because they are there, and I can find them.
It's true. It's true. It's so true. And again, we talked about earlier, but as a choice, at the end of the day, it comes down to a choice, and that we're obligated to make the right one. Um, I noticed you talk a lot about personal accountability. Does this have some significance for you, or why is that so important? Personal accountability.
So personal accountability means an awful lot to me, because it took me a long time. I spent a lot of my life, oddly, I spent a lot of my life miserable. I
Mm,
was a miserable person, and you know, a lot of people probably didn't see it, because I tried to project this outward happy-go-lucky guy, but always inside I was just angry and resentful and miserable and stuff, and it affected my relationships, and it made me awkward. I'm still awkward. I'm not gonna lie, but
we
that's
all
fine.
are. We
You
all
know,
are.
we all are, right? But you know, when I started to realize that all that stuff that I had inside me, all that stuff that was making me miserable, all the stuff that was, that resentfulness, all this, I could go back throughout the history of my life, go back to when I was a kid,
Yep.
and go back to things that my, people did when they were bullying me, or things, the fact that I was very poor as a child, and the reasons for that and everything. I could go back and pick those things out and find things all day long and call them reasons, and give myself justification for being mean, give myself justification for being miserable, give myself justification for being resentful. But I realized that personal accountability thing meant I get to choose. It went back to the choice, right?
Yes.
I get to choose how I'm going to live today. I can't do anything about all those things that happened in my life before, but I can choose how I'm going to react to things today.
Yes.
So personal accountability, and I'll combine that with the fact that I know people, I've got family members that I would put in this perpetual victim mentality, right? Perpetual victim mentality is something that I talk a lot about, because there are people that make the conscious decision every day to be a victim. Because they say, oh, well, because of this, I am persecuted. Because of that, I can't do this.
Right.
Because of that person, I'm not able to get ahead in life. Or because of that group of people, I'm not able to get ahead in life. I call it the perpetual victim mentality, because it is perpetual. It feeds on itself.
Yes.
And people get stuck in that. And like I said, I've known plenty. I'm related to some. In fact, I can't say I was ever necessarily a perpetual victim mentality, because I never felt like a victim so much. Well, maybe when I was a little kid, whatever. But I didn't like the idea of being a victim, so I wasn't going to allow myself to be a victim. But I was a perpetually pissed off person. But the victim thing, people, I don't know, they gravitate to that, thinking that somehow if they can convince themselves and others that they are a victim, somehow they don't have to be accountable anymore for their own misery. And so personal accountability is like the anti-personal or anti-perpetual victim mentality. Once you start to understand and really take hold of personal accountability as your personal mantra, that victimhood thing goes away. Once that victimhood thing goes away, and you start to really understand, I'm nobody's victim.
Right.
I'm my own victor. I can become whatever I want to be. I am not going to allow those things outside of my control to keep me in this victim box. I'm going to win.
Yes.
And you start winning.
I so appreciate the attitude of I'm gonna win, right? And because you really says is that like it's almost like, okay, so for example, Wilk, I think the way we talk to ourselves is so important. So I value immensely self-talk. So if the self-talk is I'm gonna win, I'm a winner, I deserve this, this is mine, and you claim it. I think that's so powerful, right? So again, it's the way we talk to ourselves, how we refer to ourselves, what we think of ourselves. Because if we think poorly of ourselves, then we're not going to succeed a whole lot, and may end up a lifetime of misery just because, right? So I do appreciate the self-talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's so very important. It's so very important to I mean, whether you want to be successful just as a as a human being, as a husband, as a wife, as a person in business, as a person, just in general,
Yeah.
just as a friend, or just, I don't care if you're an introvert that wants to sit home and eat Cheetos and watch television. If you're gonna do it with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
And just realize that whatever you see as winning
Yes.
is up to you to do it to win.
True. It's true. Whatever it is. And I think as long as we can continue to maintain that attitude and push ahead, and I do like the fact that you label that perpetual victim mentality, right? I think it's because It's when you label something, it's easier to deal with as opposed to something that's abstract, right? Like, I don't know where this is coming from. Whereas you absolutely label, this is what this is, and how we and here's how we can combat that. And I think the angle of showing gratitude is just so important, and you can see the direct correlation between being gratuitous, right, and being feeling and our happiness. You can see the direct connection between the two, right? Like your happiness is generated by the fact that you're thankful and you're appreciative for the things that you got. So you talked earlier, the pebble in your shoe. Well, I'm wearing a nice suit, man. So there we go.
Right. Yeah, like I said, gratitude is the genesis of happiness, and I've never personally met somebody who was an ingrate. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything to be grateful for. Couldn't find anything around them to be grateful for. Yet they were happy. No, it doesn't make sense, right? They don't work. They don't work. So typically those people that are miserable are not. They're typically the same ones that can't find anything in the world to be grateful for. There's that phrase or a saying that I saw one time, oddly, that some people can look at a field full of weeds and pick out that one beautiful wildflower, but then there's others that look at a whole field full of flowers and find that one weed, right? And when we focus on that one weed,
yes,
we lose sight of that beautiful field full of flowers. And it's the same thing with life. It's this great metaphor for life. If you focus on the weed, you're gonna miss all the beautiful flowers.
Yes.
If you focus on that pebble that's in your shoe, you're gonna lose sight of that. Oh man, I look good today, right?
It's true.
Right. So it's really, it comes down to that personal accountability, that mindset of gratitude. How are we gonna choose to live today? Are we going to choose to win, or are we going to choose to be mad the whole time?
Yeah.
And then that's the way that works. And it's the same thing. Like I said, going back to the whole conversation thing, not to kind of change directions, but that whole thing about conversation, right? If we're going to sit down and have a conversation with somebody who we know we probably disagree on something,
are
we going to focus on that one little thing that we disagree on, or are we going to try to see the humanity in them because of all the great things that we probably have in common?
Yeah.
That's where that whole thing has changed, right? We used to, be able to walk out in our driveway and have a cold beer with a neighbor, even though we probably disagreed on a fair number of things, but we had a lot of things in common too. And we could stand there and have a conversation. Now people get focused on that one thing that they disagree on. And they're like, I'm not talking to that guy anymore.
That's right.
Get off my lawn. What? It's like, come on now. We got to get along again. We got to be able to have those conversations.
Absolutely. I love it. I think the work and the direction you're in is bang on, because it's absolutely needed in our society. And it's something that's easily forgotten about because we get so caught up in our own problems, right? Things are going well, we get caught up with it, and we develop this attitude. Maybe this issue helps shape our attitude, and it's a bad situation, so we have this bad attitude all of a sudden. And so the idea of labeling, and it's very clear, and I love the messaging, right? It's very clear as to what this is, and what you're attempting, what you're wanting to do, right? Which is amazing. And so congrats on that. It's Derate The Hate. Is that the name of your podcast?
Derate The Hate. Yep, Derate The Hate podcast. So derate, just like you derate an engine or turn down a mixer board or whatever. Derate, just to turn it down, right? So Derate The Hate.
Gotcha. I've made a note here to ask about the reticular activating system, because I do think there's a direct connection to our happiness here. I wonder if you can explain that, please.
Yeah, so it goes right to a lot of the things that we've already talked about. Oddly, is when you're focused on the bad, you will seek out, your brain will naturally seek out points of affirmation to find more bad. If it's like kind of that perpetual victim mentality again, right? If you think of yourself as a victim, your mind, there's this little stem in the back of your brain, and I don't even pretend to be a doctor. I know a few, but I think they just use me for a punching bag sometimes. I'm just kidding. But no, so there's this little stem in the back of your brain somewhere back there, supposedly about the size of a number 2 pencil. And somehow that starts to fire on things when you can only focus on so many things, and the human brain can only focus on so many things at one time. Some people say one, some people say a couple. Maybe a really smart person can focus on 4 or 5. So I'll go back to me. I can focus on one thing at a time, right?
Me too.
Yeah. And so if my focus, going back to that analogy we used earlier about the person cutting us off in traffic in the morning, if we allow that to be what we say, this is the start of a horrible day, the rest of my day is going to go right in the crapper, right?
Mm-hmm.
We will seek out points of affirmation for that.
Yes.
Because that reticular activating system will only allow us to focus on the things that we have kind of predisposed ourselves to focus on. And it's weird. This thing works in so many different ways, but it really makes sense when it comes to attitude,
Mm-hmm.
because when we allow ourselves, and again, it really comes down to personal accountability. When we say we're going to have a bad day, oddly, it's pretty certain we're going to have a bad day.
Right.
It's almost guaranteed, because our brain will single out those things that make it a bad day.
Yes.
But if I say I'm going to have a good day, and I convince myself I'm going to have a good day, my brain will seek out those points of affirmation. I am going to have a good day. Because inevitably, like we said, most people throughout the day, throughout their relationship, throughout their conversation, there's going to be many, many more things that happen good in any given day than bad. So once we tell our mind that we're looking for a bad day, it will find a bad day. It will find a bad day, guaranteed.
That's it.
But that reticular activating system, and I go back to years ago. I had a mortgage business, and I was in a conference with a man that was talking about the reticular activating system.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think of it as an attitude at this time. He was talking about it in terms of business and really being able to focus on the right things, so those right things will manifest themselves and show up on your front door, kind of thing. But I kind of turned it into an attitude thing later in life when I was trying to adjust my own attitude, let's say, right? So, but he used the analogy of a car. What car do you drive? Like I drive a Chevy Silverado right now. My previous vehicle was a Chevy Avalanche. When I drove a Chevy Avalanche, because it was familiar to me, that was the thing that was most familiar to my mind. Every single time every single time there was a Chevy Avalanche within my scope of vision, it popped right away. I saw it because it's familiar to me, right?
Yes.
That's the Chevy Avalanche. Well, as soon as I got rid of the Chevy Avalanche and I got a Silverado, boom, I started noticing every Chevy Silverado that's out there, and it's because that's what's so familiar to your brain. It's that little stem thing in the back of your brain somewhere. And because it's familiar, your brain will automatically gravitate to those things. The same thing happens with happiness or misery or toxicity or whatever. And if we are stuck on or stuck in that misery mindset, that victim mentality, our brain will automatically, it just happens. Our brain will seek out those things. It will grab them. If it's within your scope of vision, if it's within your bubble, boom, that's going to be what you're going to focus on. You're always going to focus on those things. So it really comes down to, I've got to make a conscious decision today to be a happy person. I have to make a conscious decision today to to be grateful for all the things that I have versus miserable because of all the things that I want.
Right.
You know, that is how the reticular activating system works when it comes to our mindset and how we choose to live our life.
Again, we go back to that choice thing again. We've been talking about the choice, this entire time, but it's so relevant and true. I even think back, if you say to someone says, well, I don't know how to live a happy life, right? Start off with just being gratitude. Start off by just showing gratitude, and it'll naturally find its way. And then again, when the reticular activating system kicks in, then it'll all come to you, right? And so, but it just starts off with that choice. And I know we keep repeating this over and over again, but it is so true. It's a choice. It's our decision. We can make it happen and choose whichever path that we want to go down. So,
absolutely
that's amazing.
Right. Absolutely right.
Well, this has been so much fun. I'm happy that we got together and we spent some time here on the podcast talking about a very important topic, our attitude, because really, if we have the right frame of mind, the right attitude, we can go ahead and live this best audacious life that we talk about here on this podcast an awful lot. So I want to thank you for the contributions today. If our listeners want to learn more about you or catch up with your work or check out the Derate The Hate podcast, where can we send them?
Yeah, DerateTheHate.com, oddly, is going to be the best place to find out more about the show and get all of our episodes. And you can subscribe right there on the website. And then you'll automatically get those episodes dropped in your inbox every week. So that's DerateTheHate.com. WilksWorld.com, you can find a lot of my stuff there as well, most social media channels. And then also, just a quick plug, I do an awful lot of volunteer work with the organization Braver Angels. And they're out there trying to bridge that divide, right? Bridge the divide between all the people of differing mindsets across the political spectrum, So Braver Angels is where I do a lot of my work as well. But DerateTheHate.com, WilksWorld.com, and BraverAngels.org. Find me anywhere on there.
Amazing. Well, this is I'm a big fan of what you're doing. I'm on board. I love being happy, right? So how can I not?
Right?
How can I not find appreciation work that you do, man? This is great. Look. Well, congratulations on the great stuff you're doing. It's phenomenal. And keep it up, man, because this is very much needed and very, very important work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Audley. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm grateful for you, man. Thank you very much, and keep doing what you do.
For sure. All the best, Wilk. Take care. Back